Welcome, everyone, to the Better Love Movement podcast, where you will finally learn how to intentionally do dating and relationships right. My name is Anita Stoudemire, and I'm a licensed professional therapist and your personal love mentor. I've worked with thousands of singles and couples, giving them the skills needed to attract and keep the amazing love they desire. It's my heart's work to help people to get the skills needed to not only become the very best versions of themselves, but to help them grow and evolve emotionally and relationally. You can absolutely have the romantic relationship of your dreams. Come and let me show you how. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Better Love Movement podcast. This is episode number 61, and this month, in the month of January, I am super excited to be in a new decade. I'm super excited to be in a new year, and this month is Man Crush Month. Every week on the podcast of this month, I am interviewing a man with a platform, with a message, with something to say. And so many of my female listeners reached out to me about this. They wanted to see me interview more men and get their perspective on different topics and issues related to just dating and relationships. So I am super excited about this month, the month of January, and this is episode number 61. It is entitled, Is Pornography Harmless Entertainment? So today I am talking to Michael Vilches, the creator of the Man Under Construction podcast. I am going to have Michael kind of introduce himself. He's going to tell you a little bit about him and where he's from and what he's all about and how this podcast came to be. Welcome, Michael.
Well, thank you for having me. And first of all, I want to just thank you. And I'm very humbled to have the opportunity to speak on your podcast.
Awesome.
It's an honor. Yes, it's an honor. And like you were saying, I do my podcast that I push is about my journey and my story. And that's what we hope to talk about. So, yes, my name is Michael. I was born and raised in Texas. And I've gone through some difficult times in my life. And like the title suggests, it's in reference to pornography. I did struggle with that for a long time. And from that, the victory from that, the overcoming part of that was born the Man Under Construction podcast. I talk about my struggle and I talk about what I did to overcome it. And I talk about just the how low I sunk before I realized I had to get out.
Wow. Okay. Well, we're going to talk all about that. And I know my listeners, folks who follow me regularly and listen to my podcast, you know, I've spoken about this topic a few times. I'm trying to remember if I had a specific podcast episode that was dedicated just to this, but they kind of know my stance on this. So this is a good conversation to have, and we're going to talk about this and dig a little bit deeper. So tell me a little bit about your personal story.
Well, it goes back. It just depends on how you're asking it and how I'll answer it. If you're asking about my story on how I got into that struggle, it goes way back into my early teens, and I was actually introduced to it through a friend, and from there it slowly started creeping into my life, and it became a part of a pattern in my daily walk, in my everyday routine. It was actually a part, and I would step back from it for a little bit, and then it'd come back, and then I'd go through some hard times, and then it turned into an escape for me, kind of like what alcohol and drugs do for people. Pornography was that for me. It was an escape from kind of like the pain that I was going through, the stuff that I had gone through.
So tell me a little bit about some of the struggles that you said you had went through. You felt like you were using this to kind of cope with some other things going on in your life.
And yeah, that's exactly right. And most of the time, especially with dealing with pornography, a lot of people or
Mm-hmm.
men that I've interacted with, it's like, oh, I just, um, to be just honest, it's a coping mechanism for something a
Mm.
lot deeper that they're
Okay.
not willing to admit.
Mm.
It's you most of the time. It's not something that, oh, okay, I'm just doing it because as a man I'm attracted to women.
Right.
It's more than that. More often than not, it's more than that. And in my case, I had an unaddressed father wound.
Mm.
Yeah, my father wasn't really there for me during that transition from a child to adolescence, during all
Mm-hmm.
those changes, puberty or whatnot. And that's around the time that I got introduced to it.
Mm-hmm.
And as I started to grow into my teens, I depended more on it a lot because I didn't have that father affirmation in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't discover all this till way later, till I was able to finally overcome. Is when I finally realized that it was an unaddressed father wound that I had for I was holding on to it for so many years.
Okay. So you were introduced to it at a like teenage age, like a relatively
Yeah.
young age.
Yeah, 11, 12, and then
Okay. And it was something you utilized to cope.
yeah.
And so tell me when you feel like this became like a problem, like when you kind of realized, you know what, this might be a problem.
Um, when I couldn't function throughout the day, or I couldn't go a
Mm.
couple of days without um, immersing myself in that world,
Mhm.
is when I
Mhm.
realized. And this was I was involved in it in my teens, but in my 20s when I started when I had a little bit more freedom, and
Mhm.
I'm 39 right now.
Mhm.
So in my teens, the internet wasn't such a big thing just yet but it was until like my 20s, my early 20s when it started to get introduced. So the access to it was a lot easier.
Right.
And that's when it really just sunk in. That's when I really started to have a hard time with it.
And so tell me, when you say you felt like you couldn't even go a few days, you became very immersed in it. Kind of tell me what was the worst time of it, the worst part of it, where you were like, wow, this is really not good. Like I may, need help with this.
Right. Um, I think it was when it was in my first marriage,
Mhm.
and when I was about to lose everything, and when I couldn't keep the facade up of a good man, a good guy, when I couldn't keep that up anymore, and everything was starting to fall apart, and my wife couldn't trust me. And I've shared this on my own podcast and
Mhm.
on the page itself. It's something that it's not something I'm proud of, but I'll gladly share it if it'll help somebody out. It's part of my story, part of
Right.
my testimony.
Mhm.
So, excuse me. I had uh, I had brought it up. I told my then wife, my first wife, that
Mhm.
I was struggling with this, and it, of course, trust was broken, and all the mess that brings along with it. I'm not good enough, or the things that women feel, and that's one of the
Right.
things that I'm not pretty enough, I'm not good enough for him, so he has to go over there. So I had to deal with that,
Mhm.
and really that wasn't even the source of it. It was like I said, it was an unaddressed father wound that it started bleeding all over the place,
Right.
and unfortunately, you'd think when someone's about to lose everything they'd stop. That's not the case. At least in my case, it wasn't.
Mhm.
It was something that kept digging at me, and unfortunately, and I'm ashamed to say it, but it is part of my story. Uh,
Mhm.
the desire for more ended up with me breaking my vow to my first wife.
Right.
So I ended up stepping outside the bounds of marriage, and that was really kind of like the end of it. And
Okay.
yeah, that was when, uh, and from that separation, and then separation from my daughter, and that was when it really hit me in the face, and
Yeah.
I realized that I had to do something.
And so I want to interject right here as a therapist, and I've spoken clinically about pornography and the vast research that I've done about it. And what's important to know for everyone listening is that when you utilize pornography and it becomes a habit, so it's something that you go back to over and over and over, that use actually changes your brain. It changes the way the neurons and receptors in your brain connect. This is what people don't get. They don't understand. And when you are introduced to pornography young, so imagine your young developing brain is trying to form these healthy connections, these synapses are trying to form, and then that's introduced. And it chemically changes your brain. This has been proven in studies. So a lot of times people will tell me, this is harmless, everybody does it, all boys do it, boys are curious or girls are curious, and everyone does it. But here's what I need you to understand. If you continue to take in these images, it then changes your brain chemistry. And when it becomes habitual and then becomes addictive, that's what makes it so very hard to discontinue. So I've spoken about the clinical side of it, it's like, let me give you some science about it.
Right.
And people kind of poo-poo that, but I'm like, just saying.
Oh, no, I 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
Since I've overcome, I've dug in further, read, researched, and you're right.
Yeah.
When we view this, and I'm not sure what chemical it is,
The
but
dopamine, we're getting
yes,
that dopamine, yes. And
the feel good feeling
Yep.
gets released.
That's it.
And what essentially happens is that we become addicted to our own brain chemistry.
Yep.
And yeah, that's exactly what would happen.
That's
it. Like I said, I'll be completely honest because I'm very passionate about this. I've
Mm-hmm.
been down that dark road, and I want people to know out there that it ends in disaster.
Right.
No, even if you say it's harmless, it ends in some sort of disaster. It skews your view on women.
Yeah.
It skews your view on sex.
Yep.
And relationships, because when you view this stuff, you project that onto your or in my case, let's say I would project that onto my wife.
Right.
And the acts that I'm viewing, I would expect her to do that, and when she doesn't do that, I am disappointed.
Right.
And then the cycle continues again. Well, therefore I must watch porn because this is my wife doesn't love me enough to do this.
Right.
And a lot of the things that one of the things that we got to understand is that the actions that are taken in pornography are unrealistic.
Right.
They are unrealistic. They're disgraceful, disrespectful, just hideous, and unrealistic.
Right. Right.
But like I was saying, we as men, we get addicted to our own brain chemistry. And what's amazing too, one fact that I didn't know that I recently read is there's also a chemical that's released when we come to the end of the journey, when we're involved in relations with our the one we love, is epinephrine is released. And the thing about that chemical is that it enhances what you take in your eyes.
Right.
It enhances what you're viewing and actually sears it into your short-term memory. So you're watching this and it goes into your memory. And let's say it can be many years from now, and like you see something and it triggers, it's like an instant pathway to. That's why a lot of people say it's like, especially like, and you can relate it to this, like you never forget your first kiss.
Right. Yeah.
Because of that connection that your brain made by the release of that chemical that enhances memory.
Right. Right. That is so true. But what we talk about here, because I like to blend fun facts and science, because I'm a nerd, I'm a geek, is that There is such a thing called neuroplasticity, and that is your brain can change. You can rewire your brain. Now, the truth of the matter is your brain is going to fight you on that because it wants to hold on to the pathways that it's created. It wants to keep that cycle going, but you can change your brain. Your brain pathways can be changed. So it's how people heal from addictions, it's how they grow, it's how they learn new things. Your brain has the ability to change. So I tell people, don't ever feel like, if you've gone down this dark path too, that there's no way back, I'm always going to crave this or want this, or, this is always going to be a part of me or my life. You can change. You can change. And so I want you to tell us a little bit about how that change happened for you. How did you get free of this?
Well, I'll be glad to share that with you because this is the light at the end of the tunnel, right? This
Mm-hmm.
is this is where we get out of the dark stuff. But what I really had to do was dig deep inside.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, we're a lot of times we use uh, substances or different things to cope, and then like we're talking about, my case was pornography. I was using
Mm-hmm.
it to cover up something much deeper. So I had to look temporarily. I had to look at the source. I had to pull, my addiction. I had to
Mm-hmm.
dig further than the images that kept popping in my head. And I went to the source, and I realized that it was the lack of affirmation in my life from,
Mm-hmm.
that father wound. And what's funny, I was one of the books that I was reading, it told me to do this. It told me like um, analyze what you've been prone to watch.
Mm-hmm.
What is the dialogue? What are the people talking about? How are the exchanges made? And if I can say this, I'm like I said, I'm completely honest with this,
Mm-hmm.
and honest with myself. I found myself coming across um, pornography where the man was always affirmed,
Okay.
and that actually started uh, that opened the door to slowly start to come out because now I understood
Right.
what I was searching for. Now I understood that it wasn't necessarily the pornography itself that I was searching, but I was searching for affirmation.
Right. Okay.
And once I understood that, like we were talking about, I could work towards recovery. I could
Mm-hmm.
start rewiring my brain, like you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what has to happen. We have to
Mm.
rewire the brain. And you do that by, of course, you understanding the source
Mm-hmm.
and start tending to those old wounds and um, like exactly that, tending to those old wounds, but
Mm-hmm.
also replay like all that time. And I encourage this on the page too. All that time that you spent watching pornography has to be filled with
Right.
something else, and you replace that with positive activities. You read, you do constructive stuff, and that's how you
Okay.
start. Yeah, that's how you start rebuilding the neural pathways in your head.
Okay. And so you credit your wife now. She's been a big part of that, a big part of supporting you and just really being a part of this journey for you. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, exactly. And like I mentioned before, you think that when you're done with pornography, if you just look at it like, it's just something in the background and you move on,
Mm-hmm.
it'll reach back in.
Mm.
And I'm not. It's not that I was engaging in pornography, but it was bleeding into my second marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I didn't have boundaries
Mm.
with women. Not necessarily that I was engaging in any activity, but perhaps flirtatious behavior,
Mm-hmm.
messages being exchanged. I didn't have any boundaries, and I realized that all that was just bleeding
Right.
from all that pornography. I wasn't engaged in it,
Mm-hmm.
but it was still kind of hanging on to little bits of my heart. And I was at the end. I was at the door of messing up another marriage when I
Mm-hmm.
realized that, okay, I really got to dig deep. And that's where I found myself, where I had to really search beyond just the pornography and go to the source. And I credit her for that, because
Okay.
without her love, of course, and her stubbornness, because as men, we like to I'm not the problem, you're the problem.
Mm-hmm.
I really credit just her love and her just tenacity to come after and call me out, really,
Mm-hmm.
for the things that I was doing. And yeah, she's a big part, and I've shared this with her, and she's a big part of Man Under Construction.
Okay.
She's not engaged in it, but she is my biggest supporter,
Okay.
and she listens to my podcast and picks on me every now and then when I say something funny or whatnot.
Okay. Awesome. That's
So yes,
fantastic.
and go ahead. I'm sorry.
And so I think it's amazing that you have pulled your partner into this recovery, because that is necessary. So whether a person's recovering from the use of pornography or they have an addiction to alcohol or a drug, it is so important that their partner, their husband, their wife, kind of gets pulled into this conversation, that they have support from them, that they can talk about it, because
Hmm.
a huge part of men's recovery, and women, because I've had some women who have this issue, is the
Right.
shame. They talk so much about the shame that I don't know who to talk to about this. I feel shame, dirty. It's just, feel so yucky. And they either can't talk to their partner, and that's unfortunate. I'm like, your partner has to be a part of this conversation for you to get better. So
That's exactly right.
that's amazing that she was, like you said, be like, okay, we need to talk about this, and I need to hold you accountable, and
Yeah.
and wants to be a part of that process.
Yeah, and as part of that, as holding me accountable, I do have even like I said, I'm not engaging in it or anything,
Mhm.
but uh, once exposed to it, you have that vulnerability there. So
Mhm.
all my electronics, all my gadgets are have filters on them
Okay.
that shoot or alerts just in case there's any fishy activity. She'll
Mhm.
come from me, and I want that confrontation, because there's no
Right.
way, there's no I don't want to go back to that.
Right.
So those are the things that now I'm uh, pushing on the page, the Man Under Construction page.
Okay, awesome. Well, I mean, a little bit about my personal story. I was married to someone who had a pornography addiction, so I know from the woman's perspective, it's no fun. It's not fun.
Yeah,
Um, and it bled into so many parts of our lives, so many parts. And it also led to infidelity, because, as I always tell people, if you have a vice and you feed it, it will grow. It has no other choice. So you're feeding the lust, you're feeding the lust, you're feeding the lust, and the lust will grow. It will never be quenched. Your thirst for that will never be quenched, and then you're off doing other things. So it is no fun. And I'm very passionate about this subject also, because I know that it isn't harmless. It's not something that you can kind of dibble dabble in. So I know some couples who've come to me and said, well, it's something we watch together. I mean, I think it's harmless. I think it adds a little spice. It adds a little fun to our love life. And then I find out that one or the other is watching it more than they're telling their mate. So I'm like, this is not as harmless as we think.
yeah,
Um,
it's a rabbit hole that you don't want to jump in.
it really is. So I think this is a wonderful conversation. I'm so glad we're having it. I'm glad we're getting a man's perspective on it. And yeah, it's something that I just tell people. We get a finite amount of energy every day, and you really have to guard your energy. Like, there's certain things that you don't want to give your energy to. Like, how is that thing benefiting your life? There are lots of things we give our energy to, and we're not really getting any real return on it other than negative.
And one thing that we got to understand also, in regards to pornography and the brain, the brain euphoric feeling that the chemicals that we feel, like the drug, like any other drug, it has a tolerance. And let's and like in my case, yes, it starts off with just images, but then that's not enough. You don't get that dopamine fix anymore, so you go to darker stuff.
That's right.
And I thank God that I somehow had a threshold. Well, unfortunately, it wasn't that well. You know, like I said, I stepped outside the bounds of a marriage, my first marriage. But you can see the progression. You know, I started off when I was introduced to it by images. And then it turned to videos, and videos turned to, you know, harder stuff. And that's what happens because we get desensitized and we get used to, or we don't get the same, like we don't get that feeling from just the images themselves. So we go harder to get that same sensation like any other drug. And that's the thing. And you're right. You feed it and you grow a tolerance to it. And you search more stuff, and by the time you know it, you're in the same place that I found myself, outside your home with someone else.
Right.
And you look back, you've destroyed so much.
Yeah. So you are in a recovered state from this. And you talked a little bit about some of the things that you have put in place that can help you. And I think that's really important. Did you ever talk with someone? Did you ever talk with a therapist or even a good close friend, other men? Did you have someone that you could talk to about this?
Well, this is a deeper question. The thing is, and this goes into like another conversation, which I explore in the Man Under Construction podcast. On the page, I share different pages in regards to this, is that the modern man has become a solitary man. And that was my struggle. It's not that I had people reaching out to me who cared about me, but it was because of me that I didn't reach out to these guys because I was isolated. And you talk to the typical guy and you ask him who he hangs out with. A lot of them, they come home and they're just home.
Right.
They have no connection. A lot of them come home and play video games.
Right.
It's not that people aren't reaching out, and it goes both ways. But now the modern man it's been trying to look for the word. It's easier to get lost in solitude more because of our social media affair, so to speak. Our love affair with social media. We connect that way without any real connection, and that's one of the things that I did. But yes, once I really got serious about recovery, yes, I did need to reach out to guys out there. I had Bishop at my church and some friends that encouraged me along the way, and really when I finally hit that spot where I was ready to overcome this thing, I did reach out to those guys, and I realized that I needed them to be able to overcome.
Okay, great.
Yes.
That's awesome. And I want to say that this year especially, I've heard more narrative about men and men's mental health. I have another male therapist who's a friend of mine that I'm going to interview on the show. He has a whole movement called Men to Heal, and he's really passionate about men's mental health and having groups for men and just platforms where men can come together and discuss all things men issues, that they are, like you said, alone and isolative, and they need to connect. They need to start talking and having conversations about all types of things. So that's very, very important.
I completely agree with you on that. Yeah, we need to, and that's like I said, that's one of the things that I promote, brotherhood, and it's amazing when I've shared this stuff, when I poured my heart out, I've had individuals reach out to me and let me know that they appreciate what I'm doing, that they don't
Mm-hmm.
feel as alone. And
Mm-hmm.
even though it's a indirect connection, through social media, um, the fact that we're so isolated that we don't feel alone with an anonymous person indirectly
Mm-hmm.
through social media. And I realize, and when you think about it, that's how far uh, as men or even women out there we've gone,
Mm-hmm.
that we're even appreciative of the little contact we get
That's right.
through the internet, when in reality we're supposed to have that strong bond, face to face,
Right.
brotherhood or sisterhood.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's a different topic. I'm getting off topic,
Yeah, but I
but
agree.
these are the things that I do explore on the page. I don't strictly just talk about my pornography addiction, but
Mm-hmm.
I also well, I don't want to jump ahead. Was this another question that you were going to ask? I'm
Okay.
so
No,
sorry.
no. I mean, we're interested in hearing about all of this, but I agree with you that this passion, this purpose that you have with this, you're right. It's far reaching. There's lots of things to talk about. So yeah, keep going. Keep talking about all the things that, you're passionate and purpose for. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's something I'm very, very excited about. I love doing it, and in a sense, it also holds me accountable to these guys that I'm talking to,
Mhm.
and that's I don't recall the quote, but I've shared something to the effect that in helping them, I help myself. So we're essentially sharpening each other to be better men, and that's the way I approach. That's the way I approach the platform on
Mhm.
social media. I'm helping these guys and they're helping me out. So
Awesome.
yeah, that's the way we got to look at it. So in regards to the man under construction,
Mhm.
I started it because my addiction spanned like 20 years, more than half my
Mhm.
life
Mhm.
tied up and consumed by this addiction, that I lost so many valuable lessons in life that a man
Mhm.
should learn. And like I've been free for several years now,
Mhm.
and I'm barely starting to pick up the lessons that I should have learned in my early 20s, or lessons that my father should have passed down to me.
Mhm.
I'm having to learn them on my own, and of course learning with other men now that I'm aware of all this stuff that's going on. But the lessons that I'm learning through reading and uh, or picking up just through daily experience, I do share them on the podcast because I know that I'm not alone in this journey. There's other men who are in the exact same spot that I am or
Okay.
was.
Mhm.
So I'm discovering these lessons about manhood and masculinity and sharing them uh, on social media for other guys to pick up on.
Awesome. I mean, and we need more of that. We need more men in this space, like you said, teaching other men or learning from other men, talking to other men about healthy masculinity. And one of the things that I talk about at length on my platform is the need for comprehensive masculinity, that it is not this one-dimensional, I can't cry, I can't express any emotion, I must be strong, like that
Mm-hmm.
is so one-dimensional when men are so much more than that. They have tender sides, they have creative sides, they have, they hurt like the rest of us. And we have to make it okay for them to be multifaceted. Some men love to cook, some men knit, some men, play the tea time with their daughters or
Yeah.
really, love spending time with their daughters. And that's your manhood. All of that's your healthy manhood. Some men, love doing things with their wives. If they do the where they go antiquing or, they're like, yeah, I do this with my wife. It's my time to spend with her. She really enjoys it, and we get to spend time together. And I am just like so happy about that. Like, yeah, don't make him feel bad about that. He's doing something that makes his wife happy. And all of that is the comprehensive man. There's
Yeah.
many different sides to men.
Exactly. And I agree with you. 100% as well
Mm-hmm.
on that. And that's the thing that I push. I know a lot of individuals or accounts in this space
Mm-hmm.
are very one-sided, very alpha oriented.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a time and place to be alpha. I do
Right.
agree. I do agree with that. There is a time and place to be strong.
Mm-hmm.
But I try to push a well-rounded man,
Right. Right.
which I am not doing perfectly because I still got a long way to go.
Mm-hmm.
And every day we sharpen ourselves and become better. But I do try to promote that
Right.
we got to be strong, but we
Mm-hmm.
also got to be chivalrous.
Right.
We
That's
also
right.
got to we also got to be a father,
Yep.
not only to just a son but to a daughter, and we
Mm-hmm.
approach those two differently. Both have different needs.
That's right.
We got to be a husband,
Mm-hmm.
and we got to tend to her needs.
Right.
So you're right. It's not very one dimensional. We don't work, provide, sit down in front of the TV. We got to. It's when you really think about it, a good man, a good healthy man
Mm-hmm.
doesn't clock out at work. He comes home and actually starts to take care of the things of the home. And
That's
that's what I
right.
try. Yeah, that's what I try to promote.
Good. That's what I want to see happen. And, I am also a lover and promoter of marriage. I always will be. And I know marriage has kind of gotten a bad rep in the last few years. People believe that it's old-fashioned and antiquated. I've heard a lot of men that I've talked with about marriage talk about how it doesn't benefit the man. If anything, it's like, oh, that's the downfall of a man. I don't see any benefits to getting married. It's unfortunate. And I'm
Yeah,
like, no, there's a partnership that happens. To me, two is better than one. We can
exactly.
go farther when we partner. And so, yes, I want you to find the right fit, the right partner for you, but it's very important that, you recognize there are lots of benefits to being married to the right person, the right fit for you. So, yes, I'm going to continue to champion marriage because, I want to see us get back to that. And yes, I'd like to see more men, I guess, champion that too. And
And
yeah.
yeah, I support you in that as well. I do
Mhm.
support marriage. I'm happily married. And not
Mhm.
every that doesn't mean it's all peaches and cream,
Mhm.
unicorns and rainbows. But that's the thing that we got to understand as men. Uh, it teaches us so many things. It teaches us to be selfless.
Mhm.
It teaches us patience.
Mhm.
Being married to someone teaches us to care for someone else other than ourselves.
Right.
And then when children are involved, it teaches us that it's not simply all about us,
Mhm.
that life is so much more than just to go out and party and do whatever you're going to do
That's
and just
right.
live for yourself. So, and these are good things. These are
Right.
good things to learn in life that make you a better person. So yes, marriage 100%, it makes you a better man.
Right.
It really just depends on the individual.
Awesome. Well, that makes me happy because like I said, I need my listeners to hear that other than from me. So,
No, yes.
awesome.
Guys, there are guys out there that are proud to be married. And
Right.
like I said, it's not always perfect, but I, I I enjoy doing life with someone I love. And
Mhm.
that's amazing.
Mhm.
That's beautiful.
That's right. That's right. So, tell us a little bit about where we can find the Man Under Construction podcast.
The Man Under Construction podcast is on several podcast platforms. It's on Apple,
Mhm.
uh, Spotify, Stitcher, and I think Google Podcasts as well, and a
Mhm.
few others that are a little lesser known. But on the big three, it's on Apple, Spotify, and Stitcher. So you can find them there. Just search Man Under Construction. If
Okay.
you'd like to support the podcast,
Mhm.
just go to the main podcast is at anchor.fm and
Mhm.
just search Man Under Construction. And there's a little prompt there that'll show up that if you'd like to support the podcast.
Awesome. And I want you all to go and do that. more importantly than anything, it is imperative that my listeners check out every guest that I have on the show. So you're going to head over to their social media. You're going to check out their podcast. You're going to support it in any way that you can. That is so, so important to me. What's, really, really exciting is to introduce you all to so many people out here that are doing wonderful things and have you go and support them. Where can we find you on social media?
Well, right now it's still in its infancy. I barely opened the Man Under Construction in April of this year, and so far we've done good. We're close to hitting 5,000 followers, men and women, and that'll be a huge milestone. So if your listeners out there can go ahead and when they finally check out this podcast, they can go ahead and be a part of that milestone, which would be really awesome. And they can find that right now. It's just on Instagram, and it's at man_under_construction. Man Under Construction was already taken. That's why I had to kind of
right.
But I know you're going to provide a link on the show notes to that, but you can just search Man Under Construction on Instagram, and we're there. Hopefully, as the account starts to grow, we'll expand to other platforms as well.
Okay, thank you so much. So I just want to take the time to say thank you to Michael of Man Under Construction Podcast for being on the show today. This has been a wonderful conversation. I am super excited for you all to check out his platform, check out his podcast. Please head over, listen, subscribe on the platform that you like to listen to podcasts on. That is so important for those of us who have podcasts, and leave a review. That's important as well. If you are not subscribed to this podcast, please do so now. And that way you can be alerted every Monday when a new episode comes out. Do me a huge favor and rate and review this podcast. If you have a question that you would like to have answered on the show, sometimes I do that. You write in and you ask me a question and it becomes a whole podcast episode. You can send that to me at info@betterlovemovement.com. You can also reach me on my website, www.betterlovemovement.com, to get more information on love mentoring, all the services, the products. Lots of new products are coming out in January. A brand new course. We have a brand new t-shirt. So I want you to be looking out for that. And anything else? Let's see. Yeah, I think that's it. So I am really excited for the new year. I'm glad that, 2020, I never thought I'd see 2020, but yet here we are. So it's super, super exciting. But head over, support our guest in any way that you can. And as always, I'm thanking you for listening and supporting. But remember to stay open to love. Thank you for listening to today's podcast episode. If you are enjoying this podcast, please leave me a 5-star rating and review. Your ratings and reviews help me to continue to bring you more great content. Head on over to YouTube and check out the Better Love Movement channel. There's more video content there, and you can subscribe to be notified when a new video is posted. If you have a question that you would like to have answered on the podcast or in a YouTube video, please send it to me at info@betterlovemovement.com. You can also connect with me directly on the Magnify app to have your dating and relationship questions answered. That's MAGNIFI, and it's available on iOS and Android. You get your first 5 minutes for free. So give me a call and let's chat.